This is Up for Debate, episode number 224, recorded January 13th, 2021. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the debate show where the two hosts agree on everything. I'm Sean Jennings, joined by our very own Heisman winner, Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Sean. How are you doing? I'm just going to have to go ahead and mute my phone because the Islanders and the Devils are playing right now, and I have a hockey app that will make the goal horn noises.
That sounds annoying.
Rather than try to figure out how to stop that from happening, I'm just going to shut my phone off altogether. It's 8 o'clock. No, nothing important is going to happen. It's nighttime. Yeah, people need to be in bed when the sun is down, so no one should be calling me.
Well, I don't think you'll be getting any game alerts from the Maulers and the Showboats. Nothing to worry about.
The Generals they're not gonna call, and
nope. The Stars versus the Panthers, I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, I guess there's a myriad reason for that, but I do wonder what we could have had USFL decals on our phone. We could have had USFL apps. What the world could have been like. I could have been sporting a Breakers jersey.
You could.
That was a team, right? The New England Breakers?
Well, they were the Boston Breakers, then the New Orleans
Breakers.
Breakers, then the Portland Breakers, and now again the New Orleans Breakers.
Back to New Orleans, yeah.
Absolutely.
Have they started the merch yet? Can I get Portland Breakers merch or New Orleans Breakers merch?
You can get league merchandise. Oh no, you can get team merchandise. Let's see what. You can get the logos on all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Okay,
that's right. The 8 teams returning.
I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. What are we talking about tonight, Sean?
I don't even know anymore. I'm being honest with you. No, we are talking about, obviously, more defunct football leagues, Matt. We famously dedicated a whole host of episodes to the XFL and our love of the short-lived football league, but it wasn't the first failed attempt to generate a brand new football league. No, it was predated by the United States Football League, the USFL, which existed for 3 years, 3 seasons, 83, 84, and 85. And Matt, what a spectacular bomb it was. But with some interesting ideas, and as we talked about, they're bringing it back this year. The USFL is back. 8 teams owned by the Fox Broadcasting Company, with games to air on Fox and NBC this spring.
Sean, can I tell you my one glaring complaint about all of this?
You have just one?
It is a really petty complaint.
Okay.
And an extremely, dumb one, but it's a complaint nonetheless. And I don't know if I'm the only one that has this issue, but looking at the logos of these new teams, they're all, except with the one exception of the Breakers, all the other teams are red-orange. That's their color scheme. They all have the same color scheme. I hate it.
Yeah, that's
true. I hate
true.
it for that reason alone. That's really the only problem I have with the team logos, I guess. Another pretty big problem, and I think this is one that a lot of other people share. It's a real actual problem, is that a lot of the locations, with really one exception, Birmingham, they're all places that already have football teams.
That's true. Different from some of the other defunct football leagues we've talked about.
Right. When we looked at AAF, one of the notable perks was that they all of those host cities didn't have football teams. They were kind of bringing football to new locations for the most part. Some of them had football teams, I think, but for the AAF teams, right? The Orlando, Salt Lake, Memphis, Arizona, we have the Cardinals, but Birmingham, San Antonio, Atlanta has a team. So it was a good mixture.
That was one of the things that was talked about and we will talk about is the teams that were in cities that didn't have football were actually the ones that did the best, like Jacksonville, who didn't have a team at the time.
Right. And I mean, you can also make the argument that the USFL starts, the traditional USFL started later. It was designed as kind of like a competitive, like a spring football league. And this one, too, isn't really scheduled to start until April, I think.
Well, that's what's interesting is the USFL started in February. So did the XFL. So they're definitely pushing it back. But the new USFL will only play a 10-game season, unlike the original USFL that played 18.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I can't get over these terrible logos. Just really bad design all around. The New Orleans Breakers, which is kind of leading the charge for me right now for favorite team, looks like the logo makes it look like it's the logo of like an insurance company or like a natural gas firm.
It's very pleasant.
What it looks like. It's like it looks a lot like if you had just shown me the logo and not the team name, I would have thought it was like a petroleum company.
Yeah,
or natural gas or something like that.
Well, the thing is, all these new logos are based off of the original logos of the team.
So,
I mean, with
just so
slight
generic
additions, but they're pretty similar to the original teams. Believe it or not,
I don't completely mind the logo for the Michigan Panthers, which is just weird to say.
Yeah, calling them Michigan Panthers instead of the Detroit Panthers is a little wacky.
Yeah, and I don't like Houston Gamblers. Their logo looks like, to me, somebody's fantasy football logo that they like made on Microsoft Print, Microsoft Paint. I really don't like these logos at all, and they're taking me right out of the desire to even watch the league.
XFL,
their uniform
much
designs will be better. XFL were really top notch. I would say probably the best in terms of logos. Really cool logos. You had the Vipers, a dynamic,
the new one, the Battlehawks.
Mm-hmm. Everybody loved the Battlehawks. Everybody liked I thought the New York, New Jersey Guardians had a cool logo.
Sure. Oh, we were on board.
Gargoyle. Oh yeah.
Well, Matt, why don't we take a step back here and talk a little bit about what is the USFL?
Yeah, let's start from the top.
You know, we'll obviously talk about the new league and what we think about it. But you and I both read a book. I have the dust jacket here because I was actually reading it, Football for a Buck, by Jeff Pearlman, that recounts the entire history of the league. It began with a man named David Dixon. All the way back in the 60s, he kind of came up with this idea for spring football, but it wasn't until the 80s that it was actually put into place. One of the big things for Dixon was really thinking through how a league like this should work. Making sure that you secure a national TV broadcast contract, controlling spending, securing top stadiums, and making sure you have nice experiences. And the real thing was monitoring costs. That was the big thing, was making sure that these teams stayed in check. They'd lose money for a couple years, but they would slowly grow the league. The USFL played its first season in 1983 with how many teams? 12 teams?
I just had the tab open, Sean. I just had it open.
10 teams?
And I just closed it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 teams.
12 teams,
in its debut season. Later adding an additional 6 teams through an ill-fated expansion in 1984. And then the league, in its final year, 1985, was joined by a new owner by the name of Donald Trump, who purchased the New Jersey Generals, the New York Generals.
Never heard of him.
Wouldn't that be nice? And he promptly coerced the league into both moving to the fall instead of spring and suing the NFL in an antitrust lawsuit, both of which brought about the demise of the league. Matt, what did you take away from this read?
We never heard from him again after that.
Again,
that was it.
Wouldn't that be great?
It was his claim to fame. What did I take away from the story, the overall story?
Yes.
You couldn't have written a better script, honestly, for just a wacky idea turned reality. So many things broke in the right direction for this to happen, for this to take place. It really started as this really kind of cool David and Goliath story right up until, it really had me hooked and really had me believing that these guys could do it, right until the point where they actually, had to go out there and do it and field an audience and fans. In that respect, it reminded me a lot of the XFL story that we read, The Long Bomb, where they really had a lot of planning issues and scheduling issues. I really felt like that football was more at the heart of this story than the story of the XFL, if that makes sense. The XFL was about showmanship. Yeah. It was about putting a product on TV. We always talk about how football is the most televised. It's the sport of television, and there's an entertainment aspect of football that isn't present in other sports because it's designed really to be played on television. And I think really at the heart of the USFL, you had a man with a dream, David Dixon, and his dream was to what he really wanted to do, Sean, was to bring before he became this franchisee. He just wanted to bring a team to New Orleans. That's what he wanted to do at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And actually, I was trying to dig out one of my New Orleans Saints shirts from my closet. I was going to wear it in tribute to him, and I couldn't find it. But in spirit, that's really what he wanted to do. He wanted to bring a team to New Orleans to play football, and it evolved into something bigger than that. And something that I don't even think he dreamed how big it could get. And then it all came crashing down. And to me, it wasn't about the beginning, or it wasn't about the end. This really was about the journey. It was about getting from A to B. And that was the cool part. All the little bumps along the way are what make Football for a Buck such an exciting read.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a wild time. I think the big difference between the XFL, the new USFL, all the leagues that came after it is one very important distinction. They weren't franchisee owned. USFL probably was the last time we'll ever see a sports league begin where each team is owned by an individual owner rather than all being collectively owned by the league. And there's a reason for that. Because owners are problematic. And in the 1980s, where cocaine was easily available, so were women and booze. It created a lot of owners who did not have enough money to sustain these teams. You end up just creating a bit of a fun mess of stories, of players, of teams, of coaches, of owners that I don't think could ever be replicated in the same manner.
Right. It was just a complete cast of characters. Which character was your favorite? I want to describe them as characters because they were all just such characters. So many different between the coaches and the owners and the players, some of the staff of the whole story. Who would your favorite be?
I am going to say, now I have to try and find his name, Dick Curry.
Okay.
$5 if you can tell me who that is.
I was just about to look him up. Well, according to Google, Dick Curry is a yacht sales specialist. That's the very first thing. I'm not even joking. That's the first thing that pops up. And there's also an actor who was in the movie Caught in 1996. But I assume you're talking about neither of those men. This says that Dick... Okay, it's because I misspelled Curry. He was a player on the New Orleans Breakers, Sean.
No, he was the coach of the New Orleans Breakers. So, Dick Curry was the coach of the Boston Breakers, then the New Orleans Breakers, then the Portland Breakers. He stayed with the team all 3 years. But what I loved about him was he was the innovative, fun coach, right? He would do things like ask the fans to draw up crazy plays, and he would pick one each week. And no matter how zany it was, he had the team play it and invited the fan to come onto the sideline to watch their play being made. He did another promotion where, because the XFL was a lot about and there was a lot of great stories about these crazy promotions, but he gave all the fans in the stands these cards that on one side said pass and on the other side said run. And at certain points in the game, he would look up to the stands, and whichever one people were holding more of, pass or run, he would do on the field. And that kind of stuff is quintessential USFL to me, where it's just, there are no rules. We can just do any crazy thing we want, and that's great. I mean, you look at the Tampa Bay Bandits and some of their crazy giveaways they would do in the middle of the game, including the one gentleman who won $1 million at a halftime, but it was paid in installments that didn't start until 2025. Which I love, which I do kind of want to look him up and see if he's still going to get his money. I doubt it, considering the USFL hasn't existed for a long time. But it's that kind of zany stuff where they're like, nah, man, just do whatever you want.
Yes. And it's really interesting that you bring up those deferred contracts, because that was a huge part. That was like a big part of the story, kind of the craziness of it all. Is that it was completely no man's land. It was a uncharted territory in terms of all of the stops. They pulled them all out, and some of the antics. I think that would probably have also been my favorite. The letting the fans pick their own plays. That was a really cool story to read. I'm trying to think. There was the tryouts part was one of my favorite parts of the whole book, where they were holding tryouts for the teams, and they would go to like prisons and like hold tryouts there, or just like outside a steel mill. They just had people come out and try out after they got off like work. Oh man, let me see if I saved it. I had some bookmarks here that.
I know there was a story about a fired coach who came back the next day, stood outside outside the fence at practice wearing a hat and a fake beard, and got signatures, got autographs from the members of the team.
Oh yeah. Let's see. I had saved. There was one player that they were holding a tryout for. And I can't remember his name, and apparently I didn't save it, but it was a great story where they were really excited about drafting him, and then it turned out that he didn't exist. It was all like a prank.
Oh yeah, yes, an actual famous good player who was going to the NFL, and they were very excited. And they like had set up I think it was the Boston Breakers. They rolled out a red carpet. They had a private jet.
Yes,
turns out
they were
going to
pick him up at the airport, and then he never showed up. That was it. He actually, he did exist as a person.
Yes,
that was it. He was going into the NFL, but. It all fell apart when they went to pick him up at the airport, and they realized like he wasn't coming off the plane. They waited for him all day, and then it turned out that it was all just a hilarious prank by basically these. I guess they never found out who, but maybe these bored college kids. Great part of the story.
There was another great one where. They had a tryout with like 500 people at it, and almost nobody made the team. But the way it would work is if the coach liked you, he'd send you over to the bleachers, and you'd sit and wait while they tried out everyone else. And so one of the guys who auditioned, who was terrible, noticed that, just walked over and said, Coach sent me over, and they signed him to the team by accident, not realizing that he should have been kicked out. And they were reading through the list of people they signed. They said, "You signed this guy? Hey, he said you sent him over. I didn't send him over."
Yeah. Yes,
and he just
right.
sneaked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. Wasn't there somebody else who hopped a fence? He was late to the practice or something like that, and he climbed up the fence and ran in. And he was like, "Of course, I can run a 4.4 mile." And he was like, "All right, do it." And he did it. He just ran the 4.4 mile.
No, it was just a random guy. They had closed down letting people in to try out, and this guy wanted in. He's like, "Hey, coach! Hey, coach! Hey, coach!" And he just was so annoying. Let me run! And the coach said, "If I let you run, will you shut up?" And he said, "Yes." And he hopped the fence. He came over, and he was so fast and blew them away. And I think he got signed and then almost immediately got cut. But he did shut the coach up. That's for sure.
That was a fun, just a lot of those. Just the idea that they didn't vet anybody, and anybody could just walk in and take over. What did you think about their plan for localization in the beginning when they were only going to allow players from colleges in the state or region of the team? That was kind of an interesting plan. I don't really know what they were thinking about there. I guess loyalty to the state. I don't know. It was interesting.
Well, you got to remember it was a different time in sports back in the 80s. The NBA isn't quite what it was now. And really football and baseball dominated the country. And although football still does, it was a lot. College football, I also think, was bigger at the time. Again, not that it's not big now. And so, the USFL had so many great innovative ideas. And that's I'll eventually get later in the episode to why I think it worked, didn't work, could it have kept working. But man, you look at some of the ideas they had in doing a regional draft. The USFL realized more than any of these other upstart leagues how important it is to get fans on your side. You have no track record, especially in cities where there's already a team. Why am I going to root for the Pittsburgh Maulers when I'm already a Steelers fan? And they realized the number one most important thing is not playing a good game of football. That's second. Everything else is getting butts in the seats and eyes on the television. Because if you don't have money from that, you can't make a good team. And so it was through innovative things like innovative rule changes, like the 2-point play, among others. The Coaches Challenge was first introduced in the USFL. It was the regional draft, like you said. Okay, we can't get the number one pick in the NFL. We can't get Dan Marino to come play for us. But we can get the local hero to come play for us. We can get the Alabama standout to play for Birmingham. Because the people in Birmingham already know who he is, unlike the people in Washington. Brilliant. It's brilliant marketing because you can put in its name recognition. And that's, the XFL had this problem, both version 1 and version 2, where it was a bunch of nobodies you'd never heard of. There was nothing to it. And so you got to give them credit. And then the marketing ideas also are part of that, right? And the innovative halftimes and the innovative promotions. And one of the things they talk about in the book is how front and center the players were in this league. They went to every ribbon cutting. They went to every used car dealership. They were interviewed at halftime, the players. They made them available to everybody. They got the faces out there in the communities to build localized, not national, localized support. A brilliant strategy for the time.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty good answer. Yeah, that's I think of the NFL. I think of the NFL a lot like this giant Death Star that's just kind of like vacuuming up all of the ideas. Like they're gleaning like all the ideas from the desiccated corpses of the like former leagues that have fallen to their might. I think that's a pretty accurate description, especially with things like the 2-point conversion and the challenge. With the XFL, we saw with the Sky Cam, and some other innovative ideas.
The
that the XFL
scramble,
had.
of course, they kept the scramble,
Like
which
the
everyone
scramble.
still loves to this day.
Right, absolutely. With the two players concussing themselves before the game starts. Yeah,
Exactly.
probably the best idea of all. I mean, who wouldn't love to see Tom Brady charge in against former teammate Antonio Brown and
Oh my God!
just collide?
Scramble. They got to earn the right. They got to earn the right to have the ball.
Scramble. I like to believe that the scramble existed in spirit when the Monday night, like Monday Night Football, they used to have the two helmets like crash into each other before the game. I think that was their homage to the scramble.
Inspired by
The scramble, even though it was, I think, predated the scramble. But
yeah.
Anyway,
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, the biggest thing I would stress is that a sports league now is so different from a sports league like back then, especially from a media landscape perspective. You have to remember, and one of the reasons why starting a league is so different today is that there barely was cable television back then. It was only just getting started. So you had the main broadcast networks and like 10 cable channels, one of which was ESPN. And so people didn't have a multitude of choices in terms of there was no internet, there was no cell phone, there was no tablet, there was no streaming, there wasn't even satellite TV. You watched the main networks and maybe a couple of cable channels, and that was it. One of the reasons why the USFL had a reasonable antitrust lawsuit against the NFL is because they owned all the major television channels. And so you could get some amount of penetration of people just flipping around and finding it on television versus today where it would be much more difficult to do that. And so props to the USFL for realizing that. Unfortunately, the television audience didn't quite attach themselves to it in a way that made it sustainable on broadcast.
Yeah. So where did it all go wrong? I don't know. Where should we start? Where should we start unpacking with this?
I mean, we can't really get too detailed. We could do a whole series on this if we wanted to, so we kind of got to keep it a bit high level. We can certainly talk about what worked and what didn't. The first season and a half were reasonable successes, and the book makes pretty clear where the points of downfall were. But as we talked about, this idea of a slow growth, hyper-local, spring football league that controlled its own destiny, reasonable owners, long-term investment in the league, at first worked. It really did. But, again, the reason why you will never, ever see a sport started with franchise owners again is because franchise owners are a huge pain in the ass because they're usually rich lunatics, as we learn from many anecdotes in this book. And they just couldn't help themselves. And Donald Trump reserves his own spot. We'll talk about later about why the league went down. But you really have to start with the owners. It wasn't necessarily a bad product on the field. It wasn't necessarily that it was never going to be profitable. It was these owners that, through a combination of exploding player salaries, which the league initially wanted to cap and they didn't, through ill-fated expansion in Season 2, bringing on 6 more teams just to bring in cash in a league that could barely sustain the 12 they already had. And it was just wealth inequity within the league that just sunk some teams and required a host of relocations over the years where they couldn't establish fan bases. So that's really the first shoe to fall, is moving from 80. They have a reasonably successful 83. They go to 84 and say, we're not making enough money. We need 6 more teams, and we got to bring in every big star we can, and it doesn't matter what it costs, which is a really poor idea.
Yeah, that's like it's so interesting to hold the two leagues up. Talking about the USFL and the XFL, the two now defunct leagues up, and really compare their downfalls, because I think that the overall they both lost, I think, at the end because they gave into instead of an overabundance of caution, they really took a lot of unnecessary and foolish risks. But for the XFL, I think those foolish risks were just a lot more like showy, or just more like, I guess, like I got the sense from reading this book that at the heart of it all, the USFL really was trying to make a new league. And even, they were maybe trying to, you can make the argument, maybe trying to fail upwards, you think? Like, that even if they weren't successful, maybe they would have some kind of merger with the NFL, same like the American Football League, eventually in the end.
Yeah, I mean, but there's no guarantee of that. And, the 80s were a very different time from the 70s when they did merge with the AFL. I think the owners on day one said, we have a 5-year plan and we're going to make this successful. And at the end of the first year, they said, I lost $2 million. 5 years is not fast enough. And that's the problem, is just not having the forward vision to hold through and follow through on the project. Especially when there were, unlike the XFL at the end of season 1 where there was no hope, the corpse was dead, the USFL had signs of success following its first year. Many of the teams broke even. Not every team lost money. And by 84, a number of the teams were still doing well. So, I mean, it wasn't horrendous by any stretch. They just had to be patient.
I'm trying to think of the characters from this book like Mario characters.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, this all started because at first I was like, well, Donald Trump is clearly Bowser.
Oh, sure.
But he's not Bowser, though. I thought about this. I think who's really Bowser is the NFL commissioner, who I'm trying to...
Pete Rozelle?
Find his name. Yeah, Pete Rozelle. I think he's kind of the Bowser of the story. I think Donald Trump might be Wario. But I guess... I don't know. I never got the sense that Wario was really evil, per se. I think he was more greedy. Maybe Trump is Bowser, then. Maybe Pete Rozelle is Wario.
I don't think Pete Rozelle has that much influence on the story. Like, definitely the NFL didn't like the USFL, didn't want it to succeed. But at the same time, I don't think it was ever really that... They were never really were a threat to the NFL. They were in the spring. Okay, they took a couple of players away, but it was not comparable. Maybe he was more forward-thinking than the USFL was and saw something coming down the road, but I honestly don't... I think the USFL was doomed from the start without the NFL, is my 2 cents.
Herschel Walker is Mario. I think he's the Mario of the story.
No, Herschel Walker. No, I think John Bassett maybe is the Mario of this story.
Not David Dixon?
No, because Dixon really, by the time the league actually started, he didn't have a lot of participation. He came up with the idea, but by the time the league actually started, he wasn't running anything. Because what happened was the New Orleans got the Saints. And he said, okay, go make your USFL. I'm good. We have a team now. That's why New Orleans never got a USFL team.
So why is Bassett... Why would you say Bassett's Mario?
Because he was the antithesis of Trump. He was sort of the opposite. He was the owner of the Bandits, an innovative man, a passionate man who loved football, who very carefully kept team pay under control, who understood the marketing aspects of it, and turned Tampa Bay into one of the most financially and attendance-wise successful teams in the USFL. I mean, he was a man who truly believed in Dixon's vision, and saw right away what Trump was bringing to the USFL. So, of all of the ownership group, he was probably the most influential outside of Donald Trump. Yeah,
that's probably true. I think that's the That if we're going off of the analogy that we're using, if this is the roadmap that we have, I would say that Bassett is Mario, which makes I think Herschel Walker maybe like one of the mushrooms that enhances Mario's abilities.
Yeah, but he's like, what's one of the better what's the one
Maybe
that turns you into a raccoon?
That's the Tanuki suit.
Yes, he's kind of the Tanuki suit because he's better than a regular. Like players are the mushrooms. Like he's better. He's
probably the star. He's probably actually the star that makes Mario like shine and is invincible because it drew so many viewers. It put so many eyes on the league when they finally negotiated the draft. I love the part where they go into the hotel and they like literally give him like $1 million in an envelope, or they give him that check for $1 million in an envelope. Yeah. He's like, "What are you doing?" It was like a drug deal. Like. He's like, this could get me expelled. Like, if anybody knew about this, and he's just like, take the money. This is just how you know that we're serious.
Yeah, I mean, that was. I don't think it can be understated how revolutionary it was when Herschel Walker went to the USFL. Because he was not a senior, which was a requirement in the NFL, which was pretty groundbreaking, but also because he would have been a very high pick in the NFL. Now, that was the first major
Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah,
that's right. The first major player the NFL lost, and something the XFL never had was a player that was good enough and household name enough to make the NFL choose to go to the other league.
That's right.
That was really incredible.
The XFL just had the "He Hate Me," Rod Smart.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Not as quite as legitimate, but also, the idea that the XFL had was, most players get paid roughly the same amount, and you have a little extra money for one or two big name players is smart. You do need a Herschel Walker, right? You can't just subside with a bunch of nobodies. But every team should only get one or two, and not LA, which had, 10 times the salary cap of some of these other teams.
Yeah, that's what I liked was it was a novel idea, I have to say, that in the beginning the league owners had the regulations that they agreed on of spending would be capped at $1.8 million per team, and an additional $500,000 was allotted to sign 2 star players who did not count against the cap. I thought that was an interesting way to draw the lines and deviate, and it accomplishes a couple of things in that. There's a clear spending cap, a salary cap, but it also gave you additional money to have 2 star players. That and I guess there was a criteria for what a star player would be, but it prevented a situation for where one team scoops up all of the high-ranking draftable picks. I don't know. I thought that was a cool introduction in the beginning. Interesting. I guess they didn't really follow it all the way to the end, but yeah, I thought it was an interesting rule that they had set up for themselves.
Yeah, and if only they had stuck to it. I mean, it was one of the more well thought out league executions that had ever happened. They had a plan, they just didn't stick to it, and that comes to part 2 of the downfall. That's where we have to get into Donald Trump, General's owner, starting in 1984. He purchased the team and immediately began advocating for 2 things: moving the league from the spring to the fall and suing the NFL in an antitrust lawsuit claiming the NFL was a monopoly. Both those things ended extremely poorly. Eventually, Donald Trump convinced the owners to vote in favor of the move. However, that meant a decent number of owners decided just to shut down their teams rather than move to the spring, reducing the league to a theoretical 8 teams for an 87 season. And then, as well as struggling to get TV contracts and stadiums because the NFL plays in the fall at the exact same time in the exact same places. The other thing was the lawsuit, which in a just incredible twist of fate, the USFL won they proved the NFL had a monopoly on football in America and won a whopping $1, which was multiplied to $3 due to the way the laws are written. It won $3. Eventually, it was awarded $5.5 million in attorney's fees, but that wasn't nearly enough. So eventually, the USFL received a check for $3.76, with the 76 cents representing interest earned. A check that's never been cashed. Have you ever watched the 30 for 30 on the USFL?
No, I haven't.
It's called Small Potatoes. It's not my favorite 30 for 30. It's good. I think the book does a better job of telling the story. But one of the gimmicks of it is they actually track down the $3.76 check from the NFL to the USFL.
I have watched this. Yeah.
Yes.
Never mind. Yeah,
yes.
I did. I just looked up a Google images of different scenes. It had the check and the letter.
Yep.
That the letter that was written, that was a really neat moment. And they find that they track down the check. That's a good. Did they find it?
They did. They had the absolute original check, and then at the whole thing of the documentary was at the end. They got an interview with Donald Trump, and they showed him the check, and he didn't give a shit and said it was small potatoes.
Right.
And yeah, so that was it. 3 years of football with a plan to move to spring that never came about.
He walks out of the interview, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He says, "I gotta go. I got somewhere else to be."
He takes his microphone off and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Small potatoes.
Yep. So there you go. That was the USFL. Certainly brought many great stars eventually to the NFL. Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Herschel Walker, among others. It just fell apart, unfortunately.
I would like to see a movie in the same vein of
Moneyball?
Well, Moneyball, that would, yeah. I was thinking of The Big Short. The same style of movie, but also Moneyball. I guess that's that's kind of the I think the perfect aesthetic for this story to be told. The perfect format. Sad that we haven't gotten one. I don't know. Maybe now it won't be based on this book. It's a fairly recently written book, right?
Very recent.
Yeah.
No, it was a blip on the cultural radar. You know, I mean, I've told a bunch of people we were talking about this on the show, and nobody knew what the USFL was. So I don't. Oh, yeah. It didn't quite have the sort of one and done cultural bomb aspect of the XFL in the way the USFL did. It just sort of quietly went away.
I was going to say I don't think it burned as bright. I think that was the thing. Is the XFL really burned bright and then popped and fizzled almost instantly. It was a firecracker league. Whereas the USFL, I think they were really trying to start something and build it, but it just didn't have all the. I think all of these stories were just not. Nobody knew about them. That's the cool thing to me is that all of this was going on behind the scenes, and a lot of these stories just were never told. Of the stories of the tryouts and the stories of the $1 million check, and I mean they came out and were like released to the public, but I guess when they're told all together like this, it just makes for a more exciting narrative.
Well, Matt, maybe we can move on and talk about the new USFL.
Sure.
It's back, baby. Has nothing to do with the original league other than the name and the logo. They pretty much say it's totally separate. And basically, Fox, the broadcast network, Fox Sports, is bankrolling it. They say they've committed nearly $200 million over the next 3 years to its operations, with more to be coming in from investors. They're bringing back 8 teams. 8 of the original team names are coming back. The Birmingham Stallions, the Houston Gamblers, the New Orleans Breakers, the Tampa Bay Bandits, the Michigan Panthers, the New Jersey Generals, the Philadelphia Stars, and the Pittsburgh Maulers. Interestingly, each of the 8 teams will have a 38-man active roster and a 7-man practice squad. They will play an 8-game season. Interestingly enough, the very first season, all games will be played in a single city, Matt. Wild stuff. I'm assuming part of that is cost savings and part of it is COVID safety. All of the games in this upcoming season will be played in Birmingham, Alabama, and it will kick off on April 16th, 2022, to be broadcast on the networks of Fox and NBC.
That is interesting. The one city I remember hearing about that. I wonder why they chose Birmingham.
That's a good question. I think probably a good deal from the city is my guess. That's the best. And the weather must be good that time of year. Other than that, I don't know. Well, one of the teams, the Birmingham Stallions, will be based there after the league goes back to their hometowns. So,
yeah. I'm just reading a little bit of the background of the decision. According to initial information, Birmingham would be responsible for housing players during the season at the price of about $15 million, 47,000 hotel nights, while the league would play the bubble season at Protective Stadium and Legion Field in Birmingham. So, 8 teams for 10-week season. With 2 additional playoff rounds.
All the way into July.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're going to have their player selection meeting, essentially their draft, in late February. And looking forward to kicking off in April. It's definitely going to be interesting.
Timing is the big factor here, right? It's the idea that these teams are playing like spring football. I mean, to me, I think that's really for your money. That's what people are going to be tuning in to see. Is they're going to have already like passed that Super Bowl hangover. A lot of people are especially if you're not a baseball fan, you're going to be itching for football to come back, right? If you don't care about baseball, you don't care about hockey. This is like. If you live and die for football, I think that's the kind of fan that they're going to try to court. Because what else is going on besides the draft around this time?
I mean, that's been the question with all these football leagues, right? Because they've all tried the spring. Nobody's really tried the fall other than the USFL when they tried to move to the fall. And the question is, does anyone give a crap about the sport of football versus teams they already know? Like, do people just want to watch the sport? Or do they want to watch the NFL and college football?
That was the question the AAF. I mean, to me, the AAF tried to solve that. Is like, do you care? And also, do you care if it's good football, right? But if all the teams are playing crappy football or mediocre football at best, then are you watching it just for the game, for the sport, the purity of the sport, or are you watching it because there are teams that you like or players that you like? Or are you capable of rewriting those narratives and rooting for a whole new team? To me, I fell in love with the Orlando Apollos, and that was the team that I picked, and I wanted to follow. And I got some joy out of it until they started inexplicably airing the games on channels that it didn't have.
Yeah, you could never find a game.
Yeah, that was honestly where I stopped following it. I was watching Apollo games when they were on networks that I was able to have access to, and then when they started airing them at strange times in the day and on networks that I didn't know about, I stopped giving a crap. That was where I tuned out. But hopefully the USFL is allied with some big networks, right?
Yes. Yes, and the XFL, who had its season ended because of COVID, its inaugural season, did good, not great in terms of television and gaining an audience. You know, it wasn't a total disaster, but it wasn't particularly successful either. And by the way, the XFL hasn't announced and continues to stand by that they are coming back next year in 2023. Matt, we've studied these defunct leagues many times over, and I have come to the conclusion, I'm going to plant my flag right here, there will never be a successful spring football league. There is absolutely nothing you can do to make it successful, and here's why. It's not that people don't care about football. And it's not that spring sports are good, because they're not. They suck. The thing is competition. Not from sports, but from your eyeballs and for other things to watch. The XFL or the USFL may have been the last shot to ever get this thing right. Because back in those days, you didn't have much else to watch. So you were much more likely to try out and get connected. There weren't a million entertainment options, so if you were looking for something to do on a weekend, you might just pay $5 and go see a USFL game, because there wasn't anything else to do with your life. In the year of 2022, Matt, why the fuck would I watch the goddamn USFL, a league that has no notable players that we know of, is playing all their games in one city, so why would I root for any one team over the other? They're all just a bunch of teams playing each other. Are playing when I could be watching one of 100 cable channels. I could be watching any amount of streaming or YouTube content. I could be watching I could watch cricket in India if I wanted. Something you could not do in 1984. I just don't think... I think if the NFL opened a spring league, that is the only thing that might work, because they have the brand. And if they said, look, it's going to be NFL caliber play, and it's like the Chicago Bear 2 or whatever, and they play in the spring, maybe. They're burning money. This is the biggest waste of money I've ever seen. Who will watch this? And what's worse about the XFL, I give them credit, because they at least tried to make it a little different. Smash Mouth football, right? The Sky Cam and the Bubba Cam, and it's like wrestling. Hey, at least that's an angle.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Brilliant, right?
Yep.
Nobody liked it, but they tried. And even the new XFL, they mic'd up the officials, and you could hear them talking. They did the sideline. They mic'd up all the players. They sped up the game. At least they were trying to do something different. Now, we don't know all the details about the USFL yet. I have not read a single thing that says this is different in any way from NFL-style football.
No, I believe it's identical.
If they came out and said, we're going to put 5 more people on the field for each team. We're going to play with 2 footballs on the field. I'd be like, okay, hell yeah, I'll check that out. Let's do it. The mascot gets to play, whatever. I don't care. But if you're just going to put on more football, why? It really bums me out, because I like football and I hate baseball and it bums me out when there's like nothing to watch. Basketball a little bit, maybe hockey. That's the other thing too. The NBA is much bigger now than it used to be, so there is more competition there than there was in the 80s. But I don't know. I've ranted for a while, but spring football can't work. It just can't. No.
Would you consider cricket? Would you start watching cricket?
Well,
I thought about it.
This is my other point. If you were a Fox Sports and you had $200 million burning a hole in your pocket and you wanted to own something, you have to find a new sport. Because soccer, nobody gave a shit about 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Now it makes real money, okay? And there's no reason. F1, Formula 1, nobody gave a shit about 10 years ago. Now it's extremely popular in the U.S. There's no reason.
The documentary had a lot to do with that.
But that's what I'm saying. You build a new sport, not co-opt an existing one. Football is the NFL. It's like the Kleenex. It's the name brand.
No, I think you're right. And I think there was one league that may have gotten it more right than any other league we haven't mentioned them yet. I think maybe the Arena Football League.
Yes. Again,
I think they super got it right, because
they never cared about TV.
Yeah. I think they almost made it into a different sport. And they took the existing idea of football and turned it on its head, right? With the no out of bounds. The quarterback can be, there's no fair catches. The quarterback can be they had all different rules, right? I think they even, didn't they get rid of the forward lateral? Like you could even do a lateral, something crazy like that. Field goals were worth different amounts, and the field goal was a lot harder because it was like up higher in the air. That's cool because it's innovative, and they're taking an existing design and they're going even further with really transforming it into something completely novel and different. I agree with you in that, having a retread budget football league in the spring is not going to be successful. I do wonder though, with the advent of gambling, as you know, sports gambling now, do you think that could maybe bring some viewership? I don't think it'll be a success, and I think this will be a one and done thing. I don't think we'll be talking about USFL again next year, but could sports gambling now be? Could USFL kind of tack on with that?
Look.
But then you don't have to actually watch the game to just bet on them. I don't know.
Well, what I'm saying is traditional football can't work in the spring. You want to go wild and try some innovative stuff? Sure. I'm surprised the NFL hasn't integrated more of that into the NFL with prop bets and some of these other things you can do and integrating them into the game. Absolutely, they could do that, 100%. But, again, you can't take a sport everybody knows and push it too far either. Right? If it starts to become unrecognizable from football, then you're just having to re-educate a whole audience. I mean, Matt, you look at something, mixed martial arts, esports, some of these upcoming, lacrosse. Do you know that there's a lacrosse league?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
there's a nascent lacrosse league, yep.
There's absolutely no reason why, especially with parents being concerned about injuries, young kids playing football, they're not playing the way they used to. I think there's big opportunities in alternate sports, and invest the money and give it a shot. And you don't have to spend $200 million to start a lacrosse league. You don't.
That's true.
Because it's not football. And so, you know.
Yeah, this is going to be a failure. I think we can pretty much safely say that.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
I really think there is no hope for a spring football league. Unless, I mean, I thought that they had learned their lesson with like the XFL change the original format. Was it the XFL or the AAF that they did away with kickoffs, and they had the players.
It might have been both.
Teams just started at the 20-yard. Like that wasn't even the craziest change, but try new things. Like the USFL had the 1 foot catch, or that required like college rule. Like, you got to try. You got to innovate. Right? You're not going to be the NFL. People aren't going to care about the New Jersey Generals next year. They're not going to care about the Houston Gamblers. It's going to be a completely passé thing, and it just seems like a big waste of time and money.
I will say I enjoyed the new XFL a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it did some really smart things, and I thought the play wasn't terrible.
Definitely a big improvement from the AAF, yeah.
Yeah, and the old XFL, for sure.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, when the USFL and the XFL go up head-to-head in the spring, are there enough players to go around? Is there enough eyeballs to go around? Probably not.
I think where we have the alternate, the true purpose of the alternate football teams, or the alternate football leagues, the true purpose is for them to be minor league teams for the NFL. They're places for undrafted college players or drafted lower college players to go and wet their feet. Right, they're there and be placeholder. Like we saw, like Taylor Heineke, right? He was an XFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Couple of other notable NFL players. It's like it's a second chance. It's a second chance league for a lot of NFL players who went undrafted or drafted really low or what have you. It's a second chance league. That's what that's their real purpose. And
But
they don't have to be televised, but that's
you
why
can't,
they exist.
You can't
that
live
or the Canadian Football League.
Well, but you can't live as a leftover league. Not in 2022. Not in America. I'm sorry. Now, if you want to say 70% of the team is leftovers, great. That's fine. I get it. You're not going to get every name brand player on the planet. But I think unless they pull a USFL Classic and get some Heisman winners and get some top picks to say, you know what, I had the choice to play in the NFL, and instead I'm going to choose the USFL or the XFL, then to me, that's the number one thing they can do to get a lot of attention on this thing, is when that superstar college quarterback who's supposed to go number one says, screw you, NFL, I'm going in the spring. Holy crap. Does that make it legit? Until then, they'll always be seen as the cast-offs, unfortunately, regardless of how good they are or are not.
Once you get Ben Roethlisberger's future replacement, to turn down the Pittsburgh Steelers contract and pick up that Pittsburgh Maulers contract, then
that's right.
That's when you know you've made it. Yeah,
that's right. I hope they do. I hope they do a cheesy draft too, where the player walks up and holds up the jersey with their name on it and the number of their, and then they get the hat. They put the hat on.
It's almost like the USFL in 2022's USFL took every wrong step that they could
so far.
Put football in cities where football already exists. Boring. Don't change or innovate on any of the already existing rules or structure of the NFL. Boring. Even the color scheme. We're going to go back. We're going full circle. The color scheme is boring as hell. Every team is an ugly, ugly combination of orange or red, except for the New Orleans Breakers, which looks like a BP alternative. It's just really like a misstep at every turn, and when they could have just gotten it right. And the only thing is like, oh, but we play in the spring. Ooh, no, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think that no one is. You're banking off of the capital of people just like that don't care about any other sport but football. I don't think people need football that bad. I don't know. People are going to be going on vacation with their families, like you said, watching one of the 5 billion streaming services that exist now.3there's no place for it. You have to make it new and exciting, and I think that they blew it.
I don't know, man. Listen, I'll just put it this way. I'm excited for the XFL to come back, quite honestly. I do not give two shits about the USFL. I really don't. I'll watch it. We'll talk about it on the show. But I just don't have... they just have done a garbage job of getting me excited about this thing in a way that the XFL did. No, I agree. I'll be excited to talk with you next year about the triumphant return of the XFL, because I was legitimately bummed out when I heard that they were prematurely ending their season due to COVID. I had a following for the New York, New Jersey Guardians. I know you were a fan of the Bandits, right? And it was unfortunate that we didn't get to see that season to the end, but it is what it is, and hopefully they'll be back. I thought the play was more exciting. The new rule changes were smart, and they weren't. They had kind of, the whole league as a whole had kind of matured. This is just a very strange retread cash grab. Even the logo, for not just for the teams, but the USFL logo looks like it should be plastered on the back of like a really cheap plastic trophy. This is what it looks like. Just a really horribly generic. It's not encouraging.
Everything about it is just awful.
But we're going to just have to wait and see. We'll give it a fair shot, I suppose. But Matt, I think you would agree in recommending people go check out Football for a Buck. A great read.
The book was a really good read. The book was. I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed it more than The Long Bomb. I mean, they're talking about two different scenarios, two different situations. But I thought this one was extremely compellingly written. And I finished it in a weekend, which is a really big testament because I'm a pretty slow reader. But I I do recommend people go check out this and watch the 30 for 30 Small Potatoes. I thought that was obviously. I mean, I forgot that I had even watched it, but I thought it was at the time. I think I enjoyed it. It was just a while ago. Are they still making 30 for 30s?
Oh yeah, yeah. Not at like a rapid clip, but yeah, they still come out once in a while.
What was the most recent one they did?
That is a great.
Was it the Queens one?
Yes, the like multi-part one. Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah, that was the most recent one, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Once Upon a Time in Queens. Yeah. It was a 4-parter.
It was. It was.
I enjoy those 30 for 30s.
No, there are a lot of good ones. And so I would say that in addition to reading the book and watching 30 for 30, there's a great YouTube channel, USFL Forever is the name of the channel. I do recommend people check out. They have hundreds of full-length games you can watch on YouTube of the original USFL, which is kind of cool. But they also have a bunch of little oddball interviews and commercials from the time. Commercials for the official sports drink of the USFL, Matt, Squincher. Squincher Thirst. That's a real thing. I didn't make that up.
Squincher
Thirst. It's Gatorade, but not as good. And a bunch of other really funny clips. So I do recommend checking that out. Doug Flutie doing a commercial for the local, Chevy dealership. It's pretty funny.
Now, I'm going down memory lane looking at the 30 for 30s, the most recent ones. Long Gone Summer, I think, was the one I remember watching. Besides the Mets one, that was about the home run race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. Yeah. Okay, yes, they definitely are still making them.
Matt,
Squincher, is that what you said?
I believe it is. It's Squincher.
How have I never heard of this?
Squincher.
Yeah,
it does.
Have you tried this?
Hydration Network. I've never heard of it before the USFL because I just Googled like USFL on YouTube and it came up like USFL and it's a commercial for Squincher and at the end it says the official sports drink of the USFL. It's like, huh.
March Madness is coming around the corner, Sean.
Is it going to be sponsored by Squincher?
It might be. It might have to be. I gotta if I can get it for the right price. These are awfully. I mean, they're probably discontinued, which is why they're pretty pricey in some places. Oh no, I guess you can get.
Those still exist.
Squincher for you can't. You can get football for $1, but you can't get Squincher for $1.
Unfortunate. From all that USFL success, it just took right off. Money well spent. Matt, we're going to wrap up this episode here. Yeah. I'm sure we will continue to talk about defunct football leagues moving forward. I'm sure we'll have a full report on the debut of the USFL in April, so look forward to that. And, of course, we'll be doing our annual Super Bowl prop bets coming up in February, so another thing to look forward to.
It's right around the corner. So something to look forward to.
Plenty of that. But we're going to end it here.
I bet on the Generals. I think the Generals are going to beat the, Miami Heat. Is that USFL
the Miami
teams?
Heat? No, I'm going in for the Seattle Dragons.
Nah, I'm all about those. Seattle Dragons are going to take it.
You think? Not the Tampa Bay Vipers?
The Vipers were good, if I recall. They
only played 4 weeks, so I don't know if any team is.
I think they were the favorite. XFL standings. Were there any undefeated teams?
I think there were. I think the Guardians were pretty good, weren't they?
They were. They ended the Okay, the Guardians ended the season 3-2.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Defenders, the DC Defenders, the St. Louis Battlehawks, and the New York Guardians were all 3-2.
Okay.
And were all undefeated at home. They all finished the season undefeated at home
in their respective soccer stadiums.
Oh, the Vipers sucked, Sean. The Vipers were 1-4. The Vipers were 1-4.
No, they were pretty forgettable.
Garbage.
I think the LA Wildcats were pretty bad.
And your Seattle Dragons were garbage. They were 1-4 also. The Roughnecks, your Houston Roughnecks.
That's
Sean,
right.
They were the only undefeated XFL team. They were 5-0.
Good team.
Indeed. They dominated the XFL West.
In the same
That's
way,
interesting. The XFL is East-West, and the AFL is North-South.
They dominated Houston just like the Gamblers.
Yes. All right.
Wonderful job, Matt.
We should probably
Great
get
stuff.
going. This was good.
It was great. I love covering this kind of stuff.
Definitely recommend it.
Folks should keep coming back. People should keep coming back to the show for more of this, because I think they will enjoy what we have to do here on the show. UpForDebate.tv is our website. Check it out. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts to get the latest from Matt and I and all the things we're talking about. You never know what it might be when it pops up in your feed, so something you don't want to miss. But that's going to do it. On behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. We appreciate you being here as always, and we'll see you next time for another wild edition of Up for Debate.